Guys, so we're going to keep talking about World War I, and I thought since the project I assigned is for you to do some research on a person and a battle from the war, I would focus on some important people from World War I. So you can't start without admiring all of the mustaches from this time period. I mean, I guess you couldn't be a European during World War I if you didn't have an awesome mustache. I mean, look at them. Kaiser Wilhelm is my personal favorite. The person I'm going to start with is Archduke Franz Ferdinand. He was from Austria-Hungary, and he was the Archduke, which is just a fancy term for prince. So in Austria they had archdukes and archduchesses instead of princes and princesses. He was the heir to the Austrian-Hungarian throne. This was a time in history when Austria-Hungary was united, and it was a pretty large empire in Europe. If you look at it today, it doesn't look anything like that. It's a lot of little tiny countries that have been broken up, and that happened after World War I and a little bit more after World War II. So Archduke Franz Ferdinand, he was the heir to the throne. He went to inspect troops in Bosnia, which is a little country right here, next to Serbia. He went to inspect the troops. He went with his wife, and I'm going to tell you about the assassination attempt. I know I've told you a little bit about the assassination, but hold your horses. There was actually an attempt before he was successfully assassinated. So this attempt happened the day before. It was the same group, the group called the Black Hand. They were Serbian revolutionaries, and they came to Bosnia with the sole purpose of killing Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Their first go at it, they tried to blow up his car with a bomb, but they weren't successful. They only succeeded in blowing up the car that was behind Franz Ferdinand's. And in that car were five police officers who were tasked with protecting the Archduke and his wife. Those 5 men were sent to the hospital, and the next day Franz Ferdinand wanted to go and visit them and thank them for their service. On the way, he decided to go in an open car again. Probably not a great idea, but he did it anyway. So on the way to the hospital, his driver took a wrong turn, and in a crazy twist of fate or something, I don't really know, ran into one of those revolutionaries from Serbia, Gavrilo Princip. He was one of the guys who had tried to blow Franz Ferdinand up the day before. So I don't know if it was a plot that the driver was in on. What? It's one of those mysteries of history that the car drove right past this guy. He shot Franz Ferdinand and his wife, and they both died on the way to the hospital. Very sad. You know how much I love history puns, so I have included one for you. It says, my driver made a wrong turn. Shoot. Too soon? Anyways, Franz Ferdinand was killed. Remember, he was the heir to the throne, so that's a big deal to have the heir to the throne assassinated. His uncle, Franz Joseph, the Emperor of Austria-Hungary, was not happy. I mean, obviously, his heir to the throne had been assassinated. But as I was looking at pictures of him, I realized, look at that face, that's a not happy face. And I kept looking at pictures and realized that pretty much all of his pictures, look, it's young Franz Joseph, not happy face. Older Franz Ferdinand, not happy face. Look at that. He just wasn't a happy person. So imagine, he was made even more unhappy when his heir to the throne was assassinated. So he called up his buddy, Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, and said, my nephew has been assassinated, I don't have an heir to the throne anymore. We're allies, you have to help me take over Serbia, because they were behind the whole thing. Kaiser Wilhelm was best friends with Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And so he was really sad that his best friend had been shot and killed. So he said, whatever you need, Franz Joseph, I am there for you. I've been building this giant navy and this army, and I have nothing to do with them. So let's do it. Let's go to war. That's exactly what they did. Franz Joseph, on July 28, 1914, declared war on Serbia. Nikola Pasic was the president, the leader of Serbia at the time. So he received Franz Joseph's declaration of war, and he called up his buddy, because remember, Serbia is a little tiny country, and they were fighting against the Austro-Hungarian Empire and against the German Empire. So he called up his buddy, Tsar Nicholas II. The T is silent. So Tsar Nicholas II was the leader of Russia at this time, and he was allied with Serbia, with Nikola Pasic, so he agreed to go to war, and he declared war on Austria-Hungary the very next day. So you got Austria-Hungary, Russia, Serbia is a small country right here, and they were allied with Russia. This is the Russian royal family. This is Tsar Nicholas and his wife, Tsarina, and then their children. They were archdukes and archduchesses in Russia as well. Sadly, their family was executed by Russian revolutionaries in 1918. So by the end of the war, they were executed. But anyways, he joined the war, and France got involved. They were also allied with Russia. So this is where that web of alliances comes in. Georges Clemenceau, he was actually the leader of France towards the end of World War I, but he was one of their most famous leaders. So that's why I chose to include him instead of the president at the time, because he's the one who really helped France towards the end of the war. So Georges Clemenceau is who that is. France declared war on Austria-Hungary, so Germany thought this would be an excellent time. Kaiser Wilhelm strikes again. He had wanted to conquer France for a really long time, and he thought, what a perfect time. I'll just fight France now too. So he declared war on France. But the French had been defending their borders against Germany because they saw it coming. They knew that Germany wanted to conquer them. So they'd been building up their defenses, and Germany was having a hard time breaking through. So they thought, we'll just go through Belgium and go around. The only problem with that is that Belgium was neutral at that time. It hadn't chosen a side. And it was a big no-no to go through a neutral country, because Germany was basically invading them. So the leader, King Albert I of Belgium, was highly offended when his borders were crossed by 700,000 German troops. So King Albert calls up King George V of Great Britain and said, you will never believe what the Germans just did. And George V said, oh no, they didn't. I'm sure that's exactly how he said it. So George V is not happy about Germany violating Belgium's neutrality. So he declared war on Germany. It's getting to be a world war, guys. The good news is that Winston Churchill, who played a huge role in World War II, but now we're still in World War I. Don't get ahead of yourselves. Winston Churchill was First Lord of the Admiralty. So in that role, he got to be in charge of the Navy and building ships and making sure they were supplied. And he had seen the war with Germany coming from years off. So for the last few years, he had been building ships. He had actually started England's first Air Force. They didn't have one yet because the airplane had only been invented 11 years before the war started. So it's a really new invention. But he started an Air Force and started building up the Navy so that they could compete with Germany. And then when Great Britain joined the war, they were ready. So without Winston Churchill, Great Britain would not have been halfway prepared for World War I, and probably, who knows, could have lost very early on. But thanks to him, they were prepared. That's all I'm really going to tell you about the outbreak of World War I, but I wanted to point out something random, because you know I love my random history facts. So as I was looking at pictures to show you, this is King George V of Great Britain. And I know that I've told you that Kaiser Wilhelm, George V, and Tsar Nicholas II were cousins, But I was looking at pictures and I realized how much they look alike. Tsar Nicholas and George V. So here's George V. Here's Tsar Nicholas. They look a lot alike. George V. Tsar Nicholas. I don't think that video is super great quality, so I may send you a picture so you can see it close up. They were such great friends that they posed for a picture in 1918. I like to think they did it for their granny, Queen Victoria, but sadly my dreams were crushed because she died long before 1918. So, anyways, that's all I have for you for history today. I want you to keep working on your projects. Maybe you chose one of the guys I told you about today. If you didn't, that's okay. I want you to send me the name of the person you were researching and send me the name of the battle that you have decided to research. And then, once you've done that, I want to see the research that you have so far. So anything you have found, send me a picture of your notes so that I can see your progress. And have an awesome day, guys.